Since 2003, this is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Jump Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Junk Beyond Studios here on the Sports Source. As you can probably see, I'm not John Pennington. I'm Josh Ward, in for John today. Honored to be in for him. John will be back on next week's show. Today's show is loaded up. We have a great panel here that you can see that I'll introduce in just a moment. And we have a lot to talk about. There was a defensive coordinator firing and hiring this week. We will get to that. There is a schedule to break down. We know the games in order for 2026. There are Tennessee football players who have announced they're headed to the NFL draft. We'll cover that. Plus, big week coming up with just a few weeks to go for Tennessee basketball ahead of SEC play. So we are loaded up on today's show. Let's dive right into the first segment of today's show here on the Sports Source, and it's brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. For the best local attorneys in all of East Tennessee, and remember, the Garza Law Firm is here in East Tennessee. Turn to and trust Marcos Garza and his team. You can go online, visit garzalaw.com. As we do dive into the first segment, I want to welcome the panel who is here to prop me up and make sure that I avoid as many mistakes in John's show as we can. Vince Farrar and Will West from 99.1 The Sports Animal. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you, Josh.
Ryan Callahan from GoVols247.com covering Tennessee football and Tennessee football recruiting. Ryan, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And a former Tennessee offensive lineman, great analyst here for the Sports Source as well as the digital network, Ollie Lane. Ollie, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well.
Guys, a lot of news this week with Tennessee football. So on Monday, Tennessee officially announced Tim Banks is out as the defensive coordinator, and just a couple of days later, Jim Knowles is in as the defensive coordinator. So obviously leading up to that, Josh Heupel had been putting the work in on a decision to make a move, firing Tim Banks, which was a big news item, big deal. And then he went and got a big name guy, Jim Knowles, and we'll look at his background right here as a defensive coordinator, his timeline and the different stints he has had. This past season, Jim Knowles was the defensive coordinator at Penn State. Obviously, this season did not go well. James Franklin was fired. He is now at Virginia Tech. But prior to this past season, Jim Knowles was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State for 3 seasons, including 2024, helping the Buckeyes win a national championship. He was the defense coordinator against Tennessee in that opening playoff game from last season. Before that, he did a very good job at Oklahoma State. That led to him getting to Ohio State. For 8 seasons, he was the defensive coordinator for the highly respected David Cutcliffe at Duke. Also worked for David Cutcliffe in the SEC at Ole Miss as a linebackers coach, and before that, was a defense coordinator at Western Michigan. So, Jim Knowles, a big name in a big spot. Tennessee has to improve a defense that took a big step back this year from where they were in 2024. So, Jim Knowles, whichever direction you go with Will West, I'll start with you. What did you think of the move, letting go Tim Banks, hiring Jim Knowles, and now the position he's in?
Yeah, I was surprised Tim Banks was fired. No, I think he earned that. Let's be very honest, right? I mean, that was as poorly coached a defense as we've seen from a tackling perspective in the safeties and setting edge. And strategically, some of the moves he made going to 3-down linemen at times when you're just getting ran through made no sense to me whatsoever. I didn't think he blitzed nearly enough when you couldn't get home with 4. So I think Tim Banks is a good coach who had a bad year, and he kind of earned that. Jim Knowles is the most qualified adult for this job that you could have hired. I will say that with a caveat that it seems like year one is problematic. It's a very complex defense, I am told. I was told by somebody who covered Penn State when I reached out to say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? They had hoped that he would do some things to kind of slowly bring along his system. He did not. He just said, this is my system. They were 38th in the nation, I think, last year, 34th in the nation last year in defense. But this is an upgrade. I think it's going to take a little while for this to really get his system established and locked in. But you went and got the most qualified adult for a job. You didn't go find a Tennessee guy. You didn't go get the coach's buddy. To me, there's not a lot that you can complain about here.
What'd you think, Vince?
I was a little bit surprised but not shocked because we knew if Josh Heupel had an understanding of the kind of fan disdain of the way the season ended and his tenure, there had to be some changes. Didn't necessarily have to be him, but you knew something had to change. And he didn't have a track record of firing assistants, only left on their own when he's been a head coach. So that was noteworthy. That was a little bit of where the surprise came in. As far as the hire of Knowles, I think it's an outstanding hire. what he has done with talent and without. Ohio State with talent, and you can see, all right, how he's able to use his scheme and his evil genius, as they call him, with elite level players is impressive. But also he did it at Oklahoma State, where they got better each year. And in that conference, when they were running, everybody was scoring 40, 50 points, he had the number 4 defense in the country. So he did it without elite talent as well. That's the part that's impressive. The question is, to Will's point, do they get an updated version of Jim Knowles that has learned? Some of his quotes say, yeah, I have to alter, I have altered. Do you get that's evolved, that version of Jim Knowles? And then the other thing is there's not a ton of recruiting base with him, but that was similar to Tim Banks. Got to have elite recruiters around him because that's not something that coordinators typically do, but he certainly has not brought a ton to the table there.
We're going to, by the way, we're going to get to staff questions. There are follow-up questions to Jim Knowles being hired, so we're going to get to that coming up, and then personnel questions that factor in as well. Ollie Lane, the task of stepping in, taking over, in this case the defense, but that year one aspect, there's going to be pressure in year one. It's a schedule, by the way, that we're going to get to as well that's not that easy, but trying to get things back on track and at a higher level immediately. What kind of task is that for a coach stepping in?
Oh, it's a very pressure and stressful task. And I mean, I think Coach Heupel did this hire for a reason and on purpose, is because you can't have a lull. This can't be, all right, we're going to bring someone fresh in. He's got to build his defense up where he wants it to be, and then we're going to get rolling year 2, year 3 of him being here. No, this is a day one you need to change. This needs to be the defense. And I think he did a great job pairing a championship-style defensive coordinator with a championship-style offense. But it is going to be very stressful. I mean, especially you see where that talent level is at on the defense right now. If they can secure the young guys that they got over there, and I know we'll get into that later, but if they can secure that, add some better pieces into it so he can get some of those Jimmies and Joes, because I think he's learned a lot from that stint that he had at Penn State, that maybe there is some things that I need to adjust in year one just so he can get this thing rolling. Because Coach Heupel isn't looking at this as this is a year 2, year 3 that my defense is going to be rolling. This is I need my defense to roll now because I don't have any more time to waste. I've got to start producing here at the University of Tennessee again.
Yeah, I doubt anybody has blinders on in this situation. Jim Knowles just left a situation where James Franklin, a year removed from winning a couple of playoff games, went to the semifinal, was let go midseason the following season. So Jim Knowles just saw it firsthand, Ryan, and then making this kind of move, that tells me that Josh Heupel running the program, Danny White running the athletic department, they recognize this season was a step back. There will be high pressure next year. There will be tough competition. So from my viewpoint, everybody recognizes what's at stake heading into 2026 and the importance of getting things going as quickly as possible. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the nature of this hire shows you they understand the situation. And some fans, I think, wondered that. Will they feel the sense of urgency to really go out and go all out on fixing this staff and getting everything in place for next year? So I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you've got to be encouraged by this generally, because he went out and got what most people would agree was probably the top name he could have hired that was on the market. And you're kind of fortunate that Penn State's situation, Matt Campbell brought in his own guy. He kind of fell in your lap a little bit. So it's a great hire, though. And, again, the year 2 questions, it's a concern because we've seen this before a little bit in the past. High-profile defensive coordinator hires going into critical years at Tennessee. Sal Sunseri was seen as a good hire at the time. That one was a total disaster. I'm not putting this one in that discussion, just mentioning it. Bob Stoops was a similar situation. Didn't work, or Bob Shoop didn't work out quite as well. So to have those two in the rearview mirror, you kind of have to wonder about year one, just knowing that the track record is there already for Jim Knowles to not have a tremendous year one. So Tennessee needs him to have a tremendous year one. You hope he can learn from previous stops and maybe adjust a little bit, but it's a very good hire. No one can complain, and certainly no one can say Josh Heupel's not doing everything he can to get this defense fixed going into a critical 2026.
I also read into it that Josh Heupel has a lot more security than I think most SEC coaches have, because I don't expect it to be gangbusters next year, right? I don't think this is going to be the 2000 Ravens. At the same time, if you can tackle in space, you're going to be improved over what we just saw this past year, right? If you blitz when you haven't got home with 4 and a quarter and a half, you're going to be better than what we saw this year for Tennessee. So I think even if there is a struggle, it might be improved over what we saw with Tim Banks' defense last year.
But do they have to be gangbusters for this team to improve and be in playoff contention?
Yeah.
No.
Probably not.
If you get the didn't adjust version like at Penn State, that might still be good enough for this team to win and have a better record than last year. So it needs to be better, and maybe the complicated version of his defense is better than what we saw this year.
And And just in general, I think this is the most accomplished defensive coordinator Josh Heupel's ever had as a head coach. I mean, that means something. He's not had big-name defensive coordinators generally in the past. Tim Banks was a little bit of a shot in the dark at the time. So for him to have this, I mean, you've got to feel pretty good when you're pairing that offensive reputation with this kind of defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and Ollie, Jim Knowles also has to recognize what Tennessee does offensively and what his role as the defense coordinator is with what Tennessee at least wants to be on offense.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle for Coach Knowles coming into this is pairing it with the high-tempo, high-paced offense that Josh Heupel runs, because we've seen it affect defensive players at the end of the day. They're going to get tired. They're going to be somewhat drug across the finish line at the end of the game when we're pushing the tempo as fast as we can. So that'll be somewhat of an adjustment, and hopefully you can get back to those that 24 where you have the depth to roll people in to still have that high production on defense that we did not have this season.
And Will, you want to see more or less tempo next season?
I want all the tempo. It makes no sense. Look, my concern with this hire is that it's signaling tempo's going away.
Okay.
That's my concern with this hire, and I don't think that's the right decision at all. If I can attack space at tempo where the defense doesn't get to adjust and call what they want to call, why wouldn't I do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me from a strategic standpoint for someone to do that, but I think that's what we're about to see.
What will we see next when we come back? So Jim Knowles is the defense coordinator. We know that. What about his defensive staff? We have extensions to talk about on the offensive side of Tennessee's staff. Rumors out there as well. We'll cover that when we come back here on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. One family running one business for 105 years. That can only mean A.G. Hines Company, the best building materials and tools for your project, big or small, more than a century doing this. You can trust A.G. Hines Company. You can visit aghines.com. So in the first segment, we covered Jim Knowles. He's the new defensive coordinator. One of the next questions, what will his defensive staff look like? So there is contract status to pay attention to. Rodney Garner with his status as the defensive line coach. Right now, my guess is that he will be back next season, but this is part of the evaluation. William Inge as linebackers coach with his contract. Jim Knowles has a history of coaching linebackers, so does he want to be a position coach? Does he want to be more overall on what they're doing defensively? Earlier this week on our radio show that we do 12 to 3 on Josh and Swain, Chris Lowe came on and he said that he thinks Jim Knowles was told, hey, you can make a couple of hires if you want to. May decide to keep coaches, but has the authority to make hires, which he didn't, it appear, at Penn State last year. That could have been part of the problems for them on defense in terms of full-time assistants. Ryan Callahan, what do you think about the position Jim Knowles is in, how this defensive staff could look as Jim Knowles has decisions to make? And again, there are some contracts to be figured out on the defensive side.
Yeah, it certainly feels like a situation where he's going to bring at least one or two guys with him. The thing you don't know is who will it be. He doesn't have any mainstays that have been on multiple staffs with him. He's worked with a lot of guys over the years, so he could go a ton of different directions with this. So who knows what it's going to look like, but he's got to kind of get in here, and he'll arrive early this coming week, it sounds like, and spend some time with some of the guys and get to know them a little bit and see where there might be a fit. So you've got some options internally that no one would be shocked if any of these guys stayed, but you could certainly justify a move. You know, the secondary, obviously not the results that you wanted this year without Jermod McCoy, without Ricky Gibson, but you know, some things to evaluate. But what's he going to think? And does he want to be a walk-around defensive coordinator again? I think he was this past year at Penn State. So is that important to him to not have to coach a position, or is he wanting to do, as you said, linebackers or something else? And you got to think about recruiting too. You got to be able to bring in some guys that can help you bring in the talent you want to get those guys on the field and have an elite defense. He had that at Ohio State and Penn State. You knew the talent was there on defense. That's a big part of it. They've had some good talent at Tennessee. You got to make sure they keep the pipeline going with some good recruiters around it.
By the way, one question I got several times, you guys may have this week as well. What about the bowl game? Jim Knowles' focus is on getting ready for 2026, not preparing for the bowl game. They have a staff in place that will work on the bowl game. Jim Knowles is focused on figuring out what next year looks like. Last segment, part of it was about the system and getting things going in year one and the pressure there. I would think he wants coaches that have some familiarity with what he's going to be teaching on the field.
Yeah, no, I would agree. You probably want that. And the tough part, too, is you either have – it's almost like you're choosing if you want to replace someone on this staff with either am I going to get rid of the guys who are elite or am I going to get rid of my recruiters? And that is a tough decision to have to make because I don't know. I think Coach Chop has a really bright future. I don't think the outside linebackers were particularly good this year, and how many times did you see them not set an edge, right? Martinez, I thought he did a good job with the corners. He's done a very good job. That guy carried you in recruiting for a little minute. So those are the concerns, because William Edge is elite, and Gardner's not going anywhere if you have a choice in it, right, if you're Tennessee. So there are going to be tough decisions that have to be made there. And do you punt on recruiting to bring your own guys in, or do you punt on someone that – do you downgrade to make sure you have someone that is stepping into those roles of inside linebacker and defensive line that know your system and can maybe help you translate that more quickly?
So the defensive side, that remains a question what the coaching staff might look like under Jim Knowles. The offensive side of the ball is more taken care of. As Tennessee announced contract extensions this week for offensive coordinator Joey Halsley and wide receivers coach Kelsey Pope. He has a Blitnikoff Award winner on his resume. He's done very well in recruiting and what Tennessee has done at the wide receiver position here recently as well. Ollie Lane, the offensive staff, seeing the news of keeping everything intact on that side of the ball, at least among the full-time assistant coaches. What did you think with that news as they look to try to build and do more of what they did this past season, maybe better in 2026?
No, I mean, I think it was an excellent move. I think it was great for them to go ahead and secure the coaches that they got. Because, I mean, you look at the past few years that these coaches have been in place, they've had really good offenses. I mean, you take 24 for what it is. I mean, I think there was a lot of outstanding factors to that season, especially that your defense was just a top 10 out of 10 defense that could help you out in multiple ways. But I think this offensive staff that they put together is very productive. I mean, you saw it this year. They took a guy that was only on campus for a little over 100 days and made him to where he threw over 3,000 yards this season. I mean, that's something spectacular in its own right. So I think this staff continues to put together great plans, and they continue to evolve their offense, and that's what I really like. You know, they could have said, all right, 22 is the pinnacle. That's what we want to get to and be exactly like that every single year. But they've seen as things change around the conference and the whole landscape, they also have to evolve with that every single year. That's the one credit that I give to Josh Heupel and the staff again and again, is that they can evolve and change the way that they go out and win football games. And that's the most accredited thing that you can give to an offensive-minded coach that's able to sometimes sacrifice things for his offense for the team's victory at sake.
Vince, what did you think with the news? Any surprise that Tennessee's going to keep it as is in terms of the full-time assistant coach personnel on the offensive side?
No, because you had to take care of Kelsey Pope. You don't want to lose him, as a position coach. Plus,
that was a priority.
Absolutely, and he adds pass game coordinator to his title. Now, I think he was doing some of that already and working with Joey Halsley and Josh Heupel and the staff, but you had to take care of him from that standpoint. I also think it doesn't help Will's case of wanting the tempo all the time, because he mentioned during the year how part of the reason why at times they got to dial it down is the receivers running vertical routes, those kind of things. But he has developed that position, and so it was worthy of it. And you're starting to see it with the offense evolving this year. I think you saw maybe Joey Halsley evolve as well. So I think those are good moves. We'll see if there's any other moves, whether it's voluntary or otherwise after that.
Yeah, can we be real though? $1.5 million and nothing. I don't like to speak on what another adult makes at their job. If someone would like to overpay me, I will take it every single time. We're paying $1.5 million to coordinators who don't call plays now. Like, that's what we're doing. I mean, I get $1.5 million if you bringing your own system in, you're calling plays, things like that. But looking around the nation, because I looked at it whenever that news broke, we were on the air. Rutgers is paying $1.4 million to their offensive coordinator. I'm like, that is a lot of money for a dude who doesn't bring his own system, doesn't call plays, does not have autonomy over an offense. But it's kind of the going rate right now, it seems like, for offensive coordinators.
Yeah, I'll ask a question, though, that a lot of people do. Is money real in college football?
Yeah.
And now Danny White will tell you, well, I've got to put a budget together. So, yes, it is real, but it doesn't seem like it is in college sports, especially high-major college football.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question, but I will say there were at least reports out there that South Carolina, maybe some other schools, were interested in Joey Halsley. So did he help get
might
that
have been
raise?
some leverage.
Yeah, by taking advantage of those opportunities that might have been out there for him. So you've got to pay everyone to stay. I mean, it makes sense to keep this staff intact. I think there were some fans that maybe were hoping to see some tweaks offensively. You know, they want to see Josh Heupel delegate some in terms of being able to manage the game clock in the final minute of the half, things like that, and maybe bring in someone that can, or maybe Joey Halsley is that guy, but allow him to take the reins a bit more. So maybe you don't see as many changes this way, but it makes sense to keep that offensive staff together because they've had a lot of success, obviously.
And I'd say one thing that I think they're probably doing is internally dishing off, delegating some of those tasks to their coordinators as they continue to grow up. I mean, you've heard Halsley say it in the past. There's been a learning curve for him jumping to the OC position. I think now he's rolling into year 4 of being in that position. I think he's going to take it off the reins with that one. I mean, I think he's going to now have more control of what this offense does. And I think Heupel noticed that this year. He's like, I got to start giving some of this stuff off to these coordinators because there's only so much that I can truly handle in the stakes of a high stakes game.
And Josh, I really wonder about strength and conditioning. Is that an area that we might see a change even if it's not an on-the-field position?
Yeah, remaining question. Kurt Schmidt, who leads the strength and conditioning program, his contract is among those that are up. So, Ryan, we're paying attention to that. CBS Sports had the report last night. Marion Hobby, who's been a defensive analyst, highly respected defensive line coach, likely headed to Arkansas, looks like. So Kurt Schmidt, anything else we're paying attention to there with Tennessee's staff or questions, rumors out there?
Yeah, no, those are the main developments. Kurt Schmidt is kind of the big one that, there was some talk toward the end of the season that that's something Tennessee might evaluate internally. So really it just depends on where Jim Knowles wants to take his staff, how much does he value the guys internally, and how much is he not too worried about having guys come with him. He seems to be flexible on that in his past, so how much does he want to shake things up? And then, what does Rodney Garner do? I mean, there's a real sense that he's staying, I would say, based on the fact that Marion Hobby did, it sounds like, take that job and head to Arkansas. So
that becomes even more important because if, for whatever reason, Rodney Garner were to leave, Hobby would have been a good replacement, but he's no longer an option, it appears.
Absolutely, very proven and a Tennessee guy if you wanted to have someone like that on the staff. So, that would make sense to bring him in. The fact that he's leaving tells me Rodney Garner likely planning to stay unless, again, maybe Jim Knowles has a defensive line coach that he would like to bring with him. That's one thing we don't know yet.
Very good. Another reason this is important, when we come back, we're going to take a look at it. Tennessee saw it this week, the 2026 football schedule. It's not an easy one. We'll take a look when we come back here on The Sports Source. Welcome back into The Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by Elkmont Station. Gourmet crab cakes, pan-seared redfish, pumpkin pie creme brulee. Those are just some of the recent dishes on the ever-evolving menu at Elkmont Station in West Knoxville. You can visit their website, elkmontstationknox.com, elkmontstationknox.com. See the menu for yourself. You can make a reservation, gift cards for the holidays. Learn more at elkmontstationknox.com. We take a look at the 2026 Tennessee football schedule. We knew the opponents. Now we know the opponents in order when they'll take place, as you see there on the screen. And remember, the SEC is going to a 9-game conference schedule. Tennessee will get 5 SEC games at home, 4 on the road this year. Then that will alternate heading into 2027. As you see it there, Furman is the opener. Then Tennessee will play in Atlanta against Georgia Tech. Then home for Kennesaw State. And then the SEC opener, September 26, will be against the Texas Longhorns, 2 SEC games, in fact, at home to open up Texas and then Auburn in back-to-back weeks. As you look at the schedule there is one off week in the 2026 season. That is going to be Halloween, October 31st, in between South Carolina and Kentucky. So Tennessee will play 8 games before the bye week and then finish with Kentucky, Texas A&M on the road, LSU. I think their head coach is Lane Kiffin now, in Knoxville, and then Vanderbilt in Nashville to close things out. Guys, have at it. Vince, I'll start with you. You see the schedule there. You saw it this week. What stood out when you saw the games, where they're ordered, how they're put together?
Boy, it's weird to see 9 SEC games there. That's going to take some time to register and comprehend and get used to. No Georgia and Florida. That always is weird. I think considering some other gauntlets that a few other SEC teams have, I think it's a pretty fair schedule under the circumstances. I only see, and then there are some teams that who knows how much they're going to improve, the South Carolinas and the Auburns, those kind of teams. But just looking at it as expectation, I think your toughest 2-game stretch is A&M and LSU. There's not 2, 3, 4 in a row that are gauntlets on the schedule. You have it broken up potentially the way it lays out. It always plays out differently. I think that's a positive for Tennessee. Some like Mississippi State has LSU, Oklahoma, and Texas, like a 3-game stretch. So you could have had your open date in a better position before a tougher team. But still, I think with everyone's schedule being tough, I think it was pretty fair and doable.
My concern is 8 straight weeks. 8 straight weeks you're going to play at the beginning of the season, and the 2 teams that you look at and you think, we'll have better players than they do, both on the road. Don't love that. So that is concerning. I really thought when they went to this model okay, we'll bump this up, and week 0 becomes week 1, kind of like they did in high school about a decade ago when we used to cover that. So that's what I thought they would do. So you would make sure that if you're going to play 10 tough games, you get 2 bye weeks in there to kind of rest guys. My concern is by the time you get to that South Carolina game, your guys are worn out, broken from playing so many physical matchups, especially 5 straight SEC opponents, Arkansas, South Carolina on the road. That's my biggest concern about this for Tennessee. I look at that and I think, man, it looks like 8-4 again, and if you have a good year, maybe 9-3, right? Like, that's what my concern is.
There are 2 ways to look at the schedule. Like you said, it is not ideal maybe that some of your easier games are on the road, because then every game's tough in some way. That you're going to have that, I guess, on some level in the SEC no matter what. But
what could go wrong at Arkansas and at
right.
South Carolina?
Exactly. So there's that. On the flip side, Tennessee's some of their toughest games are at home. So that every game is winnable. On the other hand, maybe on some level too. So you get Alabama, you get Texas, but they're at home. Auburn comes here with Alex Golesh, but that's at home. So it could be a lot worse. But yeah, you still have to go to Texas A&M. South Carolina's been a tough road trip. Arkansas's been a tough road trip. And I think you like that the toughest games are broken up. You do have a week between. It seems like, aside from that Texas A&M LSU back to back, it seems like you have a week off. But it pretty much starts from week 2 on. Georgia Tech, and then it goes from there. It never really slows down. You have one slightly lesser game, and then it's right back to the really tough ones.
By the way, that lesser game, they won their conference this year.
Exactly.
I don't know. It looks like a tough schedule, not going to lie. It looks like it's going to be even harder when they flip it the next year and you have to go to Texas, LSU, Auburn, Alabama. That's going to be even tougher. But I think when you look at the schedule, I mean, I remember back 2020 playing 10 straight SEC games. That was a gauntlet. That was hard. Adding 9 to the schedule is going to be a lot tougher for these guys this year. But I think when you look at it, you got your favorable games at home. You're bringing most of your big-time opponents at home. The one game that stands out to me on that schedule is you got to make that trip to Texas A&M. Texas A&M's not a fun place to go play football. The 104, I think it's the biggest stadium in college football, and those fans down there absolutely love it, and they love college football. That's all they have to breathe. So that's going to be a tough trip for them. But I think overall, if you look at the schedule and you base it off of kind of forgetting last year's performances at home, but from the past, we typically perform a lot better on the friendly grounds at Neyland Stadium. So I think that's what is the most positive thing to look at, is that you're bringing a lot of these top-tier opponents into Neyland Stadium. You're getting to bring back Alex Golesh to Neyland Stadium. You get to bring back Lane Kiffin at Neyland Stadium, which everybody loves.
Jerry Mack.
Exactly. Yeah.
G5 Coach
so
of the Year. Yeah.
I think it's building a very exciting year, but there's also going to be a lot of stretches that they're going to have to play a lot of good football through.
Yeah, and how do you start? Because, by the way, Georgia Tech is no gimme win.
No.
I would think Tennessee's favored in that game. They have to replace their quarterback, but they play tough, right? So one of the offseason questions, can Tennessee get back to being a tougher football team? They'll get that tested early, and then you want to hold serve at home, right? So those first 2 SEC games are against Texas and Alex Golesh coming in. If you were to lose that game, you know what the reaction is.
Yeah.
So you can say this anytime. How do you start? Of course, but in this case, I think it's really important to put Tennessee in the right kind of position.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to start fast, especially with that game against Georgia Tech being at Georgia Tech, not the Mercedes-Benz Arena. So that's going to be a little different. But, you got to view that Texas game like that Florida game was viewed all those years ago, where you win this game, you got the start of a really good season. You lose that game, it makes your season a little shaky. I think if you start out on the right note against Texas and Arch Manning and all that got going on over there, because they're going to have some hype rolling into next year, you start there, and then you just take it week by week. And as you go week by week, you continue to make the strides to continue to play with your own destiny.
So that's a look at the 2026 schedule. We will talk more about the schedule and more Tennessee football as the show moves along. When we come back, Tennessee basketball looking to bounce back from a 3-game losing streak and another hurdle to go with it. We will talk Tennessee hoops next here on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. No one wants pests, bugs, rodents, and the like sharing their home with them. Keep them all out with a call to Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Visit them online, southeasttermite.com today for Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Want to welcome into the show Mark Pankratz, former Division I basketball player, former UT staff member, all-time Illinois Hooper. Mark, good to see you this morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Hey, doing very well. It's been a week and a half almost. Tennessee basketball trying to get ready for its next set of games after a 3-game losing streak. And now that preparation includes losing Cade Phillips, announcing this week he needs shoulder surgery, so he's lost for the season. What's the impact here? How does this affect things? A guy who's played a lot of minutes, high-energy player for Tennessee.
Yeah, we'll miss his athleticism, and I think we'll miss him in SEC play where you got really guard-oriented teams like Alabama. Get up and down, a lot of ball screen. I think we'll miss him defensively because he can switch, keep guys in front of him. And now if you give Dwayne Brown more minutes, you give Carey more minutes, those guys, they're good on the interior if we want to get the ball in the post, and they can score better than Cade can. But defensively is where we'll miss Phillips and his diversification of being able to switch out on things. And then you look at, I know we talk about Evans and Carey getting more minutes and Dwayne Brown getting more minutes, but I still go back to our guards got to play better. Ethan Berg has got to play better. We have no backup point guard right now, and I think we would be much better if we were able to have Jacoby playing some off the ball at times, or even playing less than 32 minutes a game. So I look at the other guys that still need to step up. We've had depth on the interior all season. Losing him hurts, but I don't think it hurts us as much as our guard play is hurting us right now.
From personnel options, Tennessee's better suited in the front court than a year ago, right, when J.P. Estrella went out. What would you guys think? Vince, start with you with the news of Cade Phillips, how that affects Tennessee's basketball team.
Well, Mark's points are spot on. That's no surprise. But I do think it's the one position that Tennessee does have some other bodies and some other things it can do. It hurts in the versatility, and you guys know this. Rick Barnes doesn't just have one way of doing things. He doesn't have just one answer. He likes the fact that he can change things based on the opponent and what is needed within a game with different lineups, whether it's going small, going big, changing the athleticism, all those kind of things. So it takes one little puzzle piece that he enjoys being able to solve in a game away from them. But yeah, Evans is one that's been talked about, like Mark mentioned, that could get some minutes there because he is probably going to be able to closest fill what Phillips did defensively and with that athleticism. You need scoring inside too. Is J.P. Estrella ready to take on a bigger look? Can he stay healthy to do that? Jalen Carey obviously has proved himself. So there are some options. Dwayne Brown, I don't know if he'll start, but so they have bodies they can do there. It's just, can they manage their way through those times where they're being attacked in a certain area and have answers within a game?
The two things that I've worried about with this team ever since they decided to kind of go pot committed to we're going to go big, it was the Mississippi State game last year where they just pulled Akpara out and somebody took him off the dribble over and over and over. And my concern is you're going Akpara and Carey. That's going to happen to you over and over and over in the half court. And also in an era where teams are going small ball a little bit more, you went the other way, which is probably going to be okay offensively, but defensively I get a little concerned with that. Can they run the floor? And do you have guard play, and who are the guys that are floor spacers that are going to shoot? I don't think they're there. I would like to see Tennessee maybe be able to switch between small ball and go with Carey. I don't know if they have the guards right now where they can go with four out, one in. So maybe it is Carey the entire time, and you just kind of suck up what you have to do, and somebody's going to have to defend on the perimeter when you don't want them to.
Yeah, and you had 2 or 3 pretty elite defenders. I mean, even Gainey was a pretty good defender to go with Meshack and Zakai last year. And you just don't have that. Jacoby's not the defender that Zakai is, and nobody really is. We keep talking about some other guys, Boswell being able to defend similar to Meshack, but he's not at the Meshack level. And so I think the guard defense is not where it's been at. And so now if you do go small and you put Dwayne Brown or Carey instead of more shot blockers like Cade Phillips, who's now out, JP and Akpar, I mean, you look right now, I don't think Carey's got a block shot all year. That's just not what he does. And so if guys are getting to the rim, now you're looking at guys getting in foul trouble. And so I think that we're figuring out identity. I do think, and Barnes talked about it, that we wouldn't have beaten this Houston team last year, right? We got blown out by them. I also think this team wouldn't have lost to a Kansas team or wouldn't have lost to a Syracuse team last year because we'd have been more dialed in on the details. Our defense would have carried us through a poor shooting night, so we would have beaten Syracuse. So we saw what the ceiling can be. But we got to figure out what type of style we're going to play with the loss of Cade and play fast and tempo or play more slow and get it inside.
Yeah, they're in figure it out phase. When we come back, figuring out quickly, what's the ceiling for this Tennessee basketball team? How much is it affected by the loss of Cade Phillips with a big game coming up? We're going to cover that with the scouting report here a little bit later. The ceiling for this Tennessee basketball team, how is it affected? We'll discuss here on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by Madisonville Marine. When it comes to the best summer you can have in 2026, today is the type of day that will make us long for summer 2026. You can start by making it the best holiday you can have. You can get down to Madisonville Marine or visit madmarine.com to buy your new or pre-owned boat. Now, I've seen Madisonville Marine in person. They're impressive. Go check out Madisonville Marine. Back here with Will West and Mark Pankratz, and we discussed the injury to Cade Phillips, how the lineup could be affected, some other options. How is the ceiling for this Tennessee basketball team affected? We've seen Tennessee beat Houston, which I think will be a Final Four title contender this season. Again, we take Cade Phillips out of the conversation coming off a 3-game losing streak. So the ceiling for what this Tennessee team can do, either if you project to the SEC season coming up in just a few weeks, Will, or toward the postseason, how is Cade's loss and what we're talking about right now with Tennessee basketball, how does it affect things?
Cade Phillips, nothing against him. It's just he is not my concern with him being there. I'd like to have the warm body and the minutes and the fouls to be able to have that and the little bit of versatility I feel like he brings you, runs the open floor. You know what I mean? I like to have those things. First thing we asked Mark Pankratz when he started joining us on our show on the Sports Animal, first thing, where are the floor spacers coming from, right? Who are the floor spacers? You don't still have those answers. And I thought then, that was October or early November, I thought, well, you have all month to figure this out. Well, we're a month and a half later and you still haven't figured this out. So that's what my concern is. You have to find floor spacers, or it feels like this could end up being a 2021 win team that, you know what I mean, ends up being a 10 seed or something like that. I don't think that was the season Tennessee was looking for with all the NIL Tennessee spent on players this year.
Yeah, I think this conversation is probably being had throughout all of SEC basketball right now. You look at Kentucky's lost and got blown out at times. Alabama gets blown out by Arizona. Auburn's gotten blown out. I mean, you go up and down the line of the teams that you think are going to be in the top 5 of the SEC. They've all had nights where they just didn't play well, and they're trying to figure out their identity. So I think that we saw what the ceiling could be with beating Houston. But my concern is, how does Rick Barnes handle the fact that we're not scoring? Does he continue to play the guys that are better defensively, or do we decide like, hey, we need to score more points. We need to get Jalen carrying the ball because he can score when you get it, and he can put pressure on the defense to where now if they don't double down, he's going to get a shot up. Or if they do start to double, because we saw what he could do against Syracuse, getting 20 points, now maybe they kick it out, and now you're getting inside-out threes, which are a better opportunity to score the basketball than some of the other three-point baskets that we're getting. And then we've talked a lot about the other guys. I mean, I still go back to Jacoby and Nate Ament, who we've not really talked much about.
Yeah.
Nate, one of the things that made him a 5-star recruit, one of the top 5 players in the country coming in, was the fact that his size, but it was his shooting ability. And he just not shot the ball well from the perimeter. Talk about the physicality, that's fine. But being able to shoot the ball from 3 is going to loosen things up for him to be able to get to his spots on the floor, closer to the rim, to be able to rise up. And I want to see how the team and the coaching staff adapts offensively to where we can get him in position to where he can catch and rip and get downhill, as opposed to having to back guys down and get wore out physicality because of what they're putting on him, making it tougher on him offensively. So I think this team can still finish in the top 4 or 5 of the league, but we got to figure some things out of how we're going to score the basketball against better teams.
I'm very concerned, too, about the fact that they're not hitting free throws on the road in a neutral site. That is one of the biggest indicators for whether a team makes a run in the tournament and doesn't. Road free throw percentage.
Well, that's how you get bounced in a tournament.
Yeah, exactly. So if you miss free throws like they've missed free throws the last few games in the tournament away from Food City Center, that's a little bit concerning.
Yeah. One more thing.
Yeah.
If you look at the trajectory of the best guys that have transferred into the program the last handful of years, I mean, Chaz really didn't figure stuff out until January.
Yeah.
You look at Dalton Connect, didn't figure things out until after North Carolina. So we've had a track record of guys as they've transferred. Even the point guard from Memphis that is now in the league, I forget his name, played. Most of the guys that have transferred in, it takes them time to figure out the Barnes expectations defensively, and then to be able to still be able to score points while there's such a high demand of you on the defensive end. So I do think that Nate's going to figure it out. I do think Jacoby's going to figure out. We'll be better come January, but we're getting close to January.
Right.
It's got to start. It's got to start getting figured out now.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of sense of urgency. Could it be, if we zoom out, because a lot of the conversation will still come back to what happens in March. What do you do in the postseason? Could it be that the ceiling remains high because to the points of Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament, if they continue, or if they lead the way and they get things going, we know what they're capable of offensively. The ceiling can remain high, but if they don't, the floor can start to drop based on what we've seen the last couple of seasons, where you could count on the defense. You have a little more question there. But if your offense isn't there, you're in real trouble.
But my concern is you're not going to get 20 a night from both of those guys, right? So who are the other three guys that are going to give you 7 to 9 a night?
For a season, probably not. For a weekend, maybe you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if you do get 20 from those guys, to me, the 20 becomes easier to get consistently when you got a third scorer that can space the floor.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, what's going to happen is everybody's going to gap Nate. They're going to gap Jacoby, making it hard for them to score. And now they're kicking it out, and teams are going to make us beat them from 3. And if we don't knock down shots or have a third scorer that can step up, and
Jordan Gainey off the bench last year was key
huge.
in that role.
He was huge. And hopefully JP can. I think JP is our third scorer. I think he's got to find a way to do it. But again, we need more from Ethan Bergs of the world to be able to give Jacoby a break or get him off the ball.
My guess is Tennessee's going to need scoring here in a couple of days. When we come back, Tennessee's next opponent as the Volunteers try to bounce back from a 3-game losing streak, Louisville. Louisville can score. A scouting report next. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by Hearthside Bank. Whether it's home mortgages, business banking, or planning for your financial future, you can turn to the bank that's been serving East Tennessee and Southeast Kentucky for more than a century. That bank is Hearthside Bank. Go check out their website, easy to remember, hearthsidebank.com. Back here with Mark and Vince, back as Tennessee will be back in action in a couple of days, Tuesday at home as well. And this is going to be a tough one. Louisville had a 99-73 win over Memphis yesterday, and the threes were firing from Louisville. What do you see there, Mark? I'm guessing that's probably where you're starting what Tennessee's trying to defend, but this Louisville basketball team, 9-1 on the season, they've beaten good teams early on, and Tennessee's looking for a win to bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, they're shooting 35 threes a game. They made 18 threes yesterday versus Memphis. Mikael Brown Jr. is an NBA lottery pick. But he might not even be the best player on their team. And they've got depth upon depth. And it's not just, our depth is different, right? You got some athleticism, you can play in tempo, and then you got some interior, some size. Their most athletic guys are coming off the bench. I mean, they're scoring 94 points a game. The way that they move the basketball, they can move the basketball. How we were talking about in the previous segment about not having floor spacers and being able to play in space. I mean, they are really tough to guard because they run really good screening action, but then they move the ball, and everybody other than Fru, however you announce his name, everybody else can shoot the basketball, and they can shoot at a high clip. And so when you talk about rotations, we got to be flying around. We got to get back in transition, match up, and that's where actually I think we talked about Cade Phillips earlier. That's where we can miss him because he can switch on this stuff and at least make contested threes where if we got Dwayne Brown and Carey in there and they're switching on some of their action, they're going to become tough to guard. And if we turn that basketball over, they're gone, and it's going to be tough to stay up with them.
Yeah, they dismantled Memphis. They had plus 15 in threes. So they made 18, but they held Memphis to just 3. And they have like at least 5 different three-point shooters, to your point, and their versatility. And they have bigs that come off the bench, not necessarily big scorers, but ones that can bring you different size. They're just so versatile, so well coached. You can tell. Mikael Brown, their 5-star that you talked about, the lottery pick, he's their leader in assists. So they move without the basketball, they move the basketball, and then Ryan Connolly is their leading scorer, and he averages about 19 points, wears the headband, about a 6'4" guard. So they're just well coached. You can see how much they're improved from a year ago.
Yeah, the challenge is going to be what some of the coaches call it, do you pull them into the mud, right? Do you slow them down and try to play in that half court and try to beat it down inside? That's great. But even if you slow it down and they make 15 threes and we make what we're averaging about 7 to 8, yeah. There's a big point differential there.
That's a lot of offense you have to make up.
How do we make that up? And Will mentioned, are we going to make free throws at home? So it's a hard decision of do you try to slow them down, but if their MO is threes and they're making at about a 40% clip as a team, it's going to be hard to get them into the mud and play half-court basketball and try to outscore them with 2s and free throws if they're making a bunch of three-pointers.
They've played 5 really good teams, just like Tennessee has played 5 really good teams. They've won 4 of those, and Tennessee has won 2 of the 3 of the 5 best teams that they have played. They've gotten over 90 points in 2 of them. that Memphis game, and then against Kentucky too. That was impressive. The only team they lost to was Arkansas among those really good teams. So they are proven too. It's not like they're just padding stats against weak competition. So this is legit. Tennessee is in danger. They don't lose much on their home court, but this is a really good team that's coming in here to play Tennessee.
Yeah. I'm a broken record in December. Whether Tennessee wins or loses in basketball, it's early.
Right.
Don't want to overreact. But how important is this game Tuesday with the 3-game losing streak and the final really tough test before conference play?
Well, I think it's big time. You only get so many out-of-conference opponents, especially high-caliber opponents, on your floor. That's kind of going away. A lot of these non-conference games are going to these neutral sites because it can generate more NIL money and the tournaments and whatnot. So this is one of these rare opportunities to get a high-level program in your building, and losing 3 in a row. The NCAA committee is looking at it. If we don't beat one of these opponents, and the SEC is not as good of a conference as it was last year. They've lost a bunch of games. So this is a big game for us from a momentum standpoint, a confidence, and then just for our strength of schedule going into NCAA, trying to get good seeding.
Mark, great information and insight as always. Thanks so much for being here. Big week coming up for Tennessee basketball.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Mark Pankratz with us here on the Sports Source. When we come back, we'll get back to Tennessee football. We'll get to some Tennessee football players who are moving on. One of those is Jermod McCoy, declaring for the NFL draft. Will people be begrudging Jermod for not playing this past season and moving on to the pros? We'll get to that when we come back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by Al Wilson's hard-hitting tea. If you're watching a Vols game coming up at the end of the month or a Hoops game coming up this week or making merry with friends this holiday season, what better spirit for Vol fans than Al Wilson's hard-hitting tea? Can make a great gift. And he was in studio just a few weeks ago earlier this season, and Al has put his name and his hands on this project, and it's been a big hit. Good Southern tea with a kiss of apple wine. Visit their website today to learn more, hardhittingtea.com. More news with Tennessee's football team and program heading into 2026. 3 players have announced so far that they are headed to the NFL. Cornerback Jermod McCoy, who did not play this season, and we'll get to that, as well as linebacker Arion Carter and wide receiver Chris Brazzell, who had a huge season, big breakout season in Tennessee's offense. Starting there, guys. Any surprise with the announcements that came? McCoy, Brazzell, Carter headed to the NFL.
No surprise really for me. I thought it was maybe a little bit more on the fence whether Arion Carter would leave at the end of the season. He didn't play healthy for a lot of the season, played through double turf toe. That's a tough injury to overcome. Mm-hmm. He only sat out 2 games, and but still enough good film from him this season. It sounds like he got a lot of feedback that suggested he would be a 3rd or 4th round pick in all likelihood, and that's a pretty good place to be at linebacker where very few guys go in the first 2 rounds. So sounds like he's got a good chance of maybe improving his stock leading up to the draft as well. So that's the only one that may be a little bit surprising. Brazzell and Jermod McCoy seem like kind of an open and shut case. Brazzell at least a chance to go in the first round, could be Tennessee's first round pick at wide receiver since Cordero Patterson back in 2013. So
wow.
Would be a big deal if they could make that happen.
Yeah, Patrick Brown, I saw him note as well that it would be the first linebacker selected if Arion Carter is taken since the 2017 draft when Jalen Reeves-Maybin went. So that'd be 9 years since a linebacker was taken at Tennessee. Any surprise or anything stand out with the decisions there?
Somewhat similar on the same note. I was a little shocked to see Arion Carter go. I figured because of the injury issues, because of how much, I don't feel like he got to play at his full potential just because of how much he was trying to cover up with that secondary this season. But he had a great season. Don't let me get away from that. He had a great season, more than enough tape put out there to get to the league. But I figured, especially with the injury, might have came back, put out a stronger season next year. And then the only other one that I was, I guess, a little bit on the fence was Brazzell. I think Brazzell had an incredible season, more deserving enough to go to the league. But I think if he wanted to add maybe some trophies and awards to that resume, he could have came back and probably swept the award show for a wide receiver next year if he wanted to.
And then there's Jermod McCoy, who had a great 2024 season. There was speculation or just anticipation of him possibly returning all season long. He was on pretty much every preseason All-American team without a return date set, but he was on the practice field limited in August, and all throughout the season there was talk of when could Jermod McCoy come back. It became a daily or a weekly subject Josh Heupel's press conferences. We waited till the availability report, and then he would be out each week. Do fans have any right or any reason to begrudge Jermod with the speculation, the anticipation that he could come back and that he did not play at all this season?
I mean, you can look at it that way. It just depends on how you see a situation like his. I look at it like this. He suffered the torn ACL in January.
Yeah.
How many guys do we see who, even if they come back off that, they're just not the same player right away? So but when you're looking at a guy in his situation and you're getting first-round projections mid-season without having played a snap this year, what are you supposed to do? It's a really tough position to be in. I don't think anyone can really relate until they're there. You're thinking, I could sit out and stay right here and still be a first-round pick, or come back and maybe risk putting out some bad film that knocks me down a little bit, where teams might worry if I'm going to be the same player that I was before. So that was a tricky situation. I don't know how much of an option it was for him to return. There was some reports of him maybe having some swelling and things like that as he worked his way back and came close to playing. But once they got that third loss, I think it was pretty obvious he was going to sit out the rest of the year, and that's what we continued to hear, and it played out that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think as much as fans will begrudge him for not playing this season, because, I mean, from all the reports that came out of it, he was trying each week to get back out there on the field. It's not like he did not want to play a snap this season. And so you can't hold it against the guy. I mean, he had an injury in pre-camp training, and then it just took him out of the season. And at some point, you got to weigh in the business factors of it. Like you said, well, I'm a first-round pick and I haven't played a snap yet. If I come back, I could not be the same player. But then also, on top of that, you got to listen to your training staff as well. If they're not telling you you're not ready, well, at this point in the season, I'm not compromising and not ready to go out there and maybe hurt it even more than where it was at. I think if you saw the season take a different turn, where now we're talking playoff runs and all that kind of stuff, you might have seen him plug back into there at this point. But I think with just the way the season happened and where that injury just wasn't 100% perfect for him to come back yet, I don't think you could be mad at him for that, because he did strive and try to come back out there throughout the rest of the season.
Well, I will say this is where this world that we're in now with NIL is so different. Because
That's obviously a component here.
Because not just the fact that he's got money on the line in the college and NFL sides, but these guys are now getting live feedback from agents in college that they would not have gotten until they made the choice 5-6 years ago. So he can think during the season, bouncing off an idea with an NFL agent or a guy who might be his agent for the NFL, what should I do here? And he's getting that feedback right then, instead of maybe in the past you might have just listened to a family or a trainer or something like that from high school. So these guys are getting a lot more feedback now and thinking about the business side of things in a situation like that, and that's tricky.
Yeah, if we'd heard that medical people, everybody around Jermod said, hey, you're good to go.
Yeah,
it's totally up to you. You are cleared. You can play. And he said, I'm not going to do it. That's one thing. I've not heard that from anybody. Let's say the ACL tear never happens. He's the preseason All-American candidate that everybody expected on the field when the season began. This is obviously something that can't be proven. How does that affect the defense, though? How does that affect Tim Banks' job if he has Jermod McCoy, maybe the best corner in the country?
I think it changes it drastically from the product that you saw, because, I mean, what you saw all season long was guys playing out of position early in the season to help cover up the secondary until guys like Ty Redmond and Colton Hood really kind of came more into their own and were really starting to produce back there. But you saw a big drop-off between Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson to what came out afterwards. So I think there would have been a big difference in what the defense was able to accomplish versus what they had to scrounge to try to get done throughout a football game this year.
Yeah, huge difference to be able to rely on two good corners if you'd had even just one of those guys back, either McCoy or Gibson, but certainly McCoy, along with Colton Hood, could have been a lot better defense overall.
So McCoy, Brazel, and Arion Carter, who else are we waiting on in terms of decisions? Lance Hurd, Colton Hood?
I think those are the main two to watch for sure. Hurd is a tricky one. I don't know what's going to happen there, because I think you've got his decision to think about, and he's not gotten a lot of first and second round projections that I've seen. So you're talking about a guy who might be a mid-round pick right now. And then if he comes back, who plays left tackle next year? Because I think David Sanders has some real interest in playing there too. So tricky situation on multiple fronts there. Colton Hood, I would have said during the season, based on the projections, very good chance he leaves. But I think he's a little more open maybe to staying than people might have thought. So that's definitely one to watch. If Tennessee could get him back, that'd obviously be a very big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee should try to make an effort to get Colton Hood to stay. I think for him, too, it would be beneficial because you could put another year of really great tape out there consistently with the same team and then get higher rated in that draft process. I think Hurd is the most interesting one because from my viewpoint, he had a great season this year. And that great season can parlay him, even if it is a mid-round pick. you get in the league, you make a name for yourself, and then you solidify yourself. I mean, look at Trey Smith. He was one of the last picks, and now he's the highest paid guard in the league. So, I mean, that's just how those things can play out, and I think he's got a good opportunity. But to your point, it does bring in another issue. Well, you got David Sanders, who's probably your highest paid offensive lineman right now. He wants to play at that position. So now you're also starting to think, well, I got to plug in pieces to replace him, and then I got a guy that wants to be there, but if this guy comes back, how unhappy is that guy going to be to continue to play at the right tackle position? I don't know how much of a factor that is because at least, you're out there, you're playing, you're getting good tape on the field. But at the same time, guys, especially at that tackle position, the left tackle is going to be your highly paid out position, especially in the league's eyes. So that's a primo position for an offensive lineman to play.
Yep, you're figuring out where guys are in position. You're figuring out budgets as well. So there's a lot to get figured out. And by the way, this is just for the NFL draft conversation. There will be the transfer portal, which will be affected by guys deciding to go to the NFL draft. We will come back. We're going to look at some numbers from last year. So Jeremiah Love was a running back in the Heisman finalists. We'll look at some numbers from a previous Tennessee running back. They're awfully close. Was there an opportunity there for Tennessee? Stay with us here on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment is brought to you by Safety Systems. It's the holiday season. That means packages are on doorsteps. You might be traveling. It can also mean thieves on doorsteps grabbing those packages or some worry about what's going on at your home. Whether it's doorbell cameras or more sophisticated security systems, you can call Safety Systems this week to get the help that you're looking for. You can find them online at safetysystems.com. Guys, the Heisman Trophy was handed out last night, and I know it can be a sensitive subject locally, but Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman at Indiana, the standout quarterback for the Hoosiers. And I know some fans were watching, rooting against. There was a hate watch, actually, aspect to the Heisman this year as Diego Pavia finished second, and then Julian Saint, the quarterback at Ohio State, came in third. Number 4, the fourth finalist, was Jeremiah Love, who had a terrific season. He's a terrific player, home run threat for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But last year, John Pennington on the show, he was calling for Tennessee to mount a Heisman campaign for Dylan Sampson, who was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. Well, if you look at Jeremiah Love's numbers this year, they are terrific. 1,372 rushing yards, but Dylan Sampson had 1,491 rushing yards. Sampson had 4 more rushing touchdowns than running back Jeremiah Love. Now, Love was a bigger threat in the receiving game, or as a receiver this year. 280 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, 143, and no touchdowns as a receiver for Dylan Sampson. But look at the total numbers. Jeremiah Love has an 18-yard advantage against Dylan Sampson. Sampson had 1 more touchdown than Jeremiah Love, who was a Heisman finalist. Now, every year is different. This year's campaign was one driven by people, I think, trying to find a Heisman winner, let alone finalists. But was there a missed opportunity last year? As Tennessee is an SEC school, Dylan Sampson, I think, was great in front of the media and was having a terrific season at the position. Missed opportunity when you look back at it for Tennessee?
Could it be 2 things? Could it be it's a very different year this year where we did not have quarterbacks putting up big numbers, especially in power conference football? You're going to get your one guy who's not a quarterback who's there. That was a little bit of a Jeremiah Love Lifetime Achievement Award. We don't have a 4th candidate. Here you go, buddy. You've been good the last couple of years. And also, I would like to see Tennessee promote their players a little bit more. I think Hendon Hooker, there should have been more when it comes to his potential Heisman campaign. I think that they probably should have promoted Dylan Sampson more. So I would like to see the individual players get promoted more from Tennessee, but I don't know that it makes a difference about the Heisman last year.
I was a little surprised that they weren't maybe more aggressive earlier, but I think they were ready to go had they gotten the result against Georgia. And I think that's where they kind of, we gotta hold back on this. So I think they were ready to ramp it up. Just a question of, hey, when do we do it type of thing. But the numbers there, I mean, another thing viewers are probably looking at is like, hey, that's against SEC competition.
Sure.
Whereas Notre Dame's schedule was not elite other than a couple of games. So, yeah, he very well, I thought, should have been in New York. And you could say could have been more aggressive a little bit, maybe.
The other thing about this is I think it's become such a quarterback award. You tend to just not think as much about that with running backs these days, unfortunately, because there are some really good ones that just don't get in that discussion. So I think you wonder how much of an effort it's really worth. And then also, I just don't know that the whether you push a player or not matters all that much. That was the kind of thing that mattered maybe more in the 90s when you didn't get to watch so many games. Now all these guys are on
Joey
TV.
Harrington's getting his big billboard that gets all the attention.
Exactly. So so I don't think if Tennessee had pushed Dylan Sampson, would he have been a finalist? I don't think so. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. Diego Pavia got in there not because Vanderbilt pushed him, because he kind of came to the forefront while some guys like Ty Simpson and Marcel Reed fell down the list. Someone needed to emerge. So that stuff takes care of itself, and usually the only thing you can do is maybe embarrass yourself a little bit by pushing a guy who's never even in the discussion, and everyone says, why are you touting this guy for the Heisman? So I don't think it's a big deal, but different year, as Will said. There was an opening for a running back, and also the Notre Dame treatment. Let's not lie. Notre Dame gets a little bit more attention.
Notre Dame does, yeah. Last year was also different at the running back position, too,
Yes.
To acknowledge. Ashton Jeanty was terrific at Boise State. Dylan ended up not even being a Doak Walker finalist. Now, maybe a bigger push could have helped him be one. And I think fans, understandably, have been frustrated to see, wait, we get all this, we have all this success in the SEC. So Dylan, best offensive player in the SEC, hinting what he did a few years ago. So you can be you can be the best in the best conference, but not up for the national conversation. I know that's frustrated fans. Ollie, now Tennessee had a Biletnikoff Award winner, so they've not been completely blocked out. But I recognize the frustration that's been there. Maybe fans would like to see a little more push.
I think there could have been a stronger case for Dylan Sampson to be there as a finalist last year, especially when you finish as the SEC Offensive Player of the Year and you're not a finalist. Those two things don't seem to correlate that well to me. But, I mean, when you look at the past of how Tennessee's been treated with Heisman voters, I mean, you start out, Peyton Manning should have won the Heisman, didn't. Lost to the only, I think, one of the only defensive players to ever win a Heisman. You had Hendon Hooker get snubbed for Stetson Bennett in the Heisman finalist votes in 22. And then you look at last year, you get a guy to win the SEC Offensive Player of the Year and doesn't even get the national recognition that he needs for both the Heisman and the Doak Walker Award. So, I mean, there are questions about that. But at the end of the day, to Will's point, too, it is a different landscape this year than it was last year for that Heisman race. But I think there could have been more to push the case for those guys, especially when you look at 22. I think there was more of a case to push for Hendon to be in that finalist spot. And I think last year you could have had a case to push Dylan Sampson into that forerunning spot to be at least maybe mentioned as a possibility to be in New York last year.
Yeah, for the Heisman Trophy, or I recognize, as some would say, the trophy that shall not be mentioned. We will come back. More to discuss with Tennessee's 2026 football schedule. What we missed earlier, we will look at next here on the Sports Source. Welcome back in to the Sports Source. Our final segment today is presented by Games and Things. Do you need a last-minute gift idea? You can head to Games and Things, and they have all the big items that they are famous for, so talk to Games and Things about that. But they also have plenty of stocking stuffers as well. Card sets, dartboards, boss toss. Visit OurGameRoom.com today, OurGameRoom.com for Games and Things. Guys, final segment, and thank you all for being here today on the Sports Source. A reminder, John Pennington will be back next Sunday. Huge show lined up next week. Earlier, we talked about the 2026 football schedule. We knew the opponents. Now we know the schedule, what it looks like, and we'll take another look at it here. Anything that stands out that we maybe should have covered or is worth repeating even? I'll start on October 24th. So you will have played a long stretch. This will be your 8th straight football game going to Columbia, South Carolina, and they need to bounce back. They've hired Kendall Briles, and they have Lenore Sellers coming back. Now, he needs to improve. I also think he needs more help around him heading into next season, but he will be a 3-year starting quarterback, so that'll be the 8th game of the season, Ryan, going to South Carolina to take on, at least we know, a very talented quarterback who could have declared for the draft or could have looked in the portal. It looks like he's going to stay in Columbia.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, that's one of those games we talked about earlier. Tennessee's probably going to be favored in that game going on the road. Now with Lenore Sellers coming back, maybe it just depends on what else South Carolina has around him, but that could be a much tougher game than you would have expected if he had left. And, I mean, there are a few things there. Some first-year coaches. Obviously, we mentioned Auburn and LSU. Arkansas in addition to that. So you're going to face some different teams. You don't know what to expect there. And then just not a single easy game really anywhere. The easiest game on that schedule might be a home game against Kentucky. Everything else you could see being a really tough game on any given day.
They remember what you did in November. You better be better than 2-2 in November, and that is a lot to ask.
The South Carolina game was right after Alabama, which is usually very physical, and not everybody's at their best after that. And just another reminder, everybody's got a tough schedule.
Yeah.
Everybody's got things you can say,
League-wide.
ooh, this is very difficult. So.
I think the biggest thing, too, to look at on the schedule is that Georgia Tech game. That's not being played at the Mercedes-Benz Arena, whereas in the past, if it was, that's a Tennessee home crowd at an away game.
Right.
This is going to be at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's not going to allow our fans to really take over that stadium. Now, granted, it is a smaller stadium.
Those nerds get wild, though, man.
Yes, they do. The Ramblin' Wreck, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to get after you. So that's one. It's an early game or second game of the season. You're going to have to take that and win that game to get your momentum into this gauntlet of an SEC schedule you got this year. If you drop that game against Georgia Tech, there's going to be a lot of angry questions, a lot of concerns, and then you're going to have to fight that for 9 straight games through an SEC schedule, and that's going to be difficult to do.
I'll be fascinated to see what the over-under win projection totals are for Tennessee next year. I mean, they're going to be favored if you're looking at this in a lot of these games because they are playing some of the tougher ones at home. The bar is a tough one to set, though, for this team because they've got some things to replace, obviously, from this team, and it's a big year for Josh Heupel.
You know, a lot of times in June, July, August, we're making record predictions, and it's like one game off. We could have a wide range, I think, of record predictions for 2026. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it. Thanks to these guys right here. Thanks to the crew here and our sponsors for helping make this show happen. Next week, the annual Christmas extravaganza here on the Sports Source. Thanks for being with us. Have a great week.